Shalom from Jerusalem. Today is Friday and it's the fourth day of the conference, but we haven't had a video update for yesterday or the night before because we were out in the field. So what we're going to do is send you two videos today. This will be the first one talking about Wednesday night and what happened yesterday when we were out in the field. And then the second video will bring you back right up to date to where we are now. Wednesday night, our precious brother from Germany, Heinz-Jürgen Husen, shared with us a message on the European nations and Israel. Basically, he said, being from Germany, he said he knows that the European nations don't have the best relationship with Israel right now. But the grievous part is that most of the Christians just don't see it either. Most of the Christians are illiterate concerning what's going on with Israel in the prophetic, in the political, today. So he started out by asking, what's God's purposes for the nations? And he talked about how God created the nations to bless them. But the nations rebelled. Therefore, God raised up Israel to bless the nations. This is all part of the original Abrahamic covenant, where God says that through your seed all the nations of the earth will be blessed, which we know is the gospel to the Gentiles, as well as I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. And then he shared with us a number of Gentiles in the Old Testament who were both blessed by the Jews and blessed the God of Israel. People like Nebuchadnezzar, people like Rahab, people like Cyrus. Some of them may have had a personal relationship with God, some of them didn't. God still used them. They blessed the Jews and they in turn were blessed. And then when going to the New Testament, when Paul the Apostle started traveling, God, the Holy Spirit, just did not permit him to go to Asia. Remember, he sent him to Macedonia. He went to Europe. Europe was the first place where the original early Messianic Jews took the gospel to the nations. Yeshua said, go and make disciples of all nations. The Holy Spirit directed them to Europe as one of the first places. And this was the Jews who were bringing the gospel of Jesus Christ, Yeshua the Messiah, to the pagans who were living in Rome, who were living in other places. And so they went to minister to these Gentiles in Europe. And what happened? They first faced persecution, as you know from reading the New Testament, but yet they still accomplished. They pulled out a remnant from amongst these European nations. And then Heinz-Jürgen listed a bunch of the physical blessings for Europe that came from the Jews. And then he talked about how did the Europeans react. And the church quickly turned against its Hebraic roots with such things as replacement theology, where the church now replaced Israel and got all the blessings and the Jews kept all the curses, or even cutting themselves off, changing the date of Passover, of Easter, so it didn't interfere or wasn't on the same day that the Jews celebrated Passover at the Council of Nicaea. And he quickly went to the 1517 Protestant Reformation in Germany. And that changed the political and social life of Europe and led many back to sola scriptura, in other words, only by the scriptures. But quickly, it didn't turn out that way. Again, there was an issue with the Protestant church and the Jews. Not all over the place. We know some wonderful things happened in England and Scotland, but for the most part, most of the church still was involved into replacement theology. And then Heinz-Jürgen reviewed how the nations are still dealing with the Jews, especially after World War II, and how humanism has gained more and more ground. And then in 1993, when the EU was formally joined together, which by the way is interesting, excuse me, because that's the exact same date as the Oslo Accords. And today, Heinz-Jürgen says what he sees in Europe is the repaganization through the exaltation of humanism, the Islamization, as we have many no-go zones throughout Europe, and the anti-Zionist, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel movement. This is done through the BDS movements, the boycott, divestment, and sanctions, the recognition of Palestine, which is not a state, and Lord willing, if he hears our prayers, never will be a state, at least not on the land God's given to the Jewish people. And he said the only hope for the European nations is Ezekiel 22:38. God sought for a man to stand in the gap before him. And so he ended with 1 Peter 4:7. The end of all things is at hand. Therefore be sober-minded and watch unto prayer. And our brother Ofer, who was emceeing that, said that the Greek word for sober-minded can also be linked to do not be demonized, be clear-headed. It's the same word that was used for the man who was set free of the demons at the feet of Jesus. Then yesterday, we had a most amazing time. We took a field trip, 4 buses. We went to the Knesset. Some of us went to the Rose Garden first, prayed over the Prime Minister's office and the government's offices, blessing the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, and prayed over the economy. And then we went into the Knesset, and in the Knesset, we had a great opportunity to be able to pray right there in the plenum, and to pray in other places in the Knesset, as well as having a tour. And then and it was just, the atmosphere there was very different from the last time we were there. And we were really thrilled by God to have been there. Then we went to Mount Herzl, where many of the leaders of Israel, previous leaders, are buried. And we were able to pray some more for Israel's leadership. We then proceeded to go across the city of Jerusalem to the eastern community of Ma'ale Adumim, what the world calls an occupied community, an occupied settlement. It's got 40 to 50,000 people. It's an incredibly awesome community. And we overlooked the place between Ma'ale Adumim and Jerusalem. It's called E1. And it needs to be built. It needs to be joined with Jerusalem. And we prayed for that, proclaiming scriptures over that. And then we went further on that day and finished up our time praying in some other areas in Israel. We had a great day. And we came back exhausted, but it was a wonderful time. And then last night we heard another message, and that'll be what I'll start reviewing with you on the next update. Thank you. Shalom from Zion.